A 67-year-old man with blonde dreadlocks just sold 550 of his most prized possessions, classic cars he spent a lifetime collecting, and what followed left even him in shock. Mike Hall, a man once called Canada's most passionate car hoarder, didn't just walk away from metal and machines. He let go of decades of memories, risks, hard-earned fortune, and the very identity he'd built for himself. What happens when a man's life work disappears in a single weekend? This is the story of how one wild dreamer became a legend, how fame came unexpectedly, and how letting go became his greatest act of love. Mike Hall was never meant to be a regular guy. He was born on February 4, 1958, in St. Boniface, Manitoba. Even as a kid, he stood out. Tall, thin, with a wild imagination, Mike was obsessed with machinery. His parents often found him taking things apart: bicycles, radios, lawnmowers. He didn't just want to fix them. He wanted to understand how they worked. But school never fit him. He wasn't interested in books. He was interested in gears, tools, and engines. That passion would take him far, but not in the way anyone expected. Mike didn't go to college. He went to work, but not in an office. He built a career doing something incredibly risky. He got into a field called slope stabilization. That meant working on cliffs and dangerous terrain to prevent rock slides. Through his company, Chimera Springs Rock Works, Mike climbed mountain walls, drilled into stone, and even used controlled explosions to make highways and hillsides safer. It was dirty, cold, nerve-wracking work. It required absolute focus. A single mistake could mean death. But Mike loved it. It was a mix of science, strength, and survival, and it paid well. Instead of spending his earnings on luxury or vacations, Mike started buying cars. Old cars, rusty cars, forgotten cars, cars that looked like nothing to most people, but were gold to him. Mike wasn't a collector in the traditional sense. He wasn't just trying to gather expensive models to show off. He was trying to rescue stories. Over the years, Mike bought hundreds of vintage cars. He didn't keep them in a fancy building. He stored them on a massive piece of land, 26 acres in Tappan, British Columbia. The area became known as Rust Valley, and that name was perfect. Cars from the 1920s to the 1970s sat quietly in rows, many with moss growing on the roofs, grass around the wheels, and their original color barely visible beneath rust. But Mike didn't see wrecks. He saw history. Every car had a past, and in his eyes, every car deserved a second chance. Mike could walk through that field and recall each one. He remembered where he got it, what it needed, and even the name of the person who sold it to him. His memory for vehicles was nearly photographic. He once joked, "I can't remember where I parked my truck, but I can tell you the compression ratio of a 1968 Dodge Dart," and it was true. Cars weren't just a hobby for Mike. They were a part of who he was. At first, people thought he was crazy. Who would buy hundreds of broken cars and leave them outside? Friends, neighbors, even family told him it was too much. But Mike didn't care. He believed that one day he'd fix them all. He thought of himself as a preservationist, someone saving pieces of the past before they disappeared forever. For years he worked quietly, slowly fixing a few cars, adding more to the collection, and pouring everything he had into the land and the dream. But Mike's life changed forever when a film crew noticed his property. He had previously appeared on a show called Highway Through Hell, doing rescue work. The producers were fascinated not just by his skill on dangerous slopes, but by his unique appearance: long blonde dreadlocks, bright blue eyes, and the kind of voice that made you want to listen. But when they saw his land filled with vintage cars, they knew they had found something special. That's how Rust Valley Restorers was born. The show premiered in 2019 on the History Channel and soon made its way to Netflix. It followed Mike, his son Connor, and longtime friend Avery Schoaf as they restored old vehicles from Mike's collection. But it wasn't just a show about cars. It was a show about people, passion, and perseverance. Mike's emotional connection to each car made every episode feel like a chapter in a much bigger story. Connor Hall brought a younger, more business-minded energy to the show. He often clashed with Mike, frustrated by his father's tendency to fall in love with cars that would never make money. While Mike saw heart, Connor saw numbers. He kept the business grounded, reminding Mike that passion alone doesn't pay bills. Avery Schoaf, on the other hand, was the balance. With his mechanical skills and goofy charm, Avery often played peacemaker between father and son, Together, the trio became a hit. Their chemistry was natural, their arguments real, and their bond unbreakable. The show drew millions of viewers. People from all over the world connected with Mike's dream. They didn't see an old man hoarding junk, they saw someone trying to keep history alive. But as filming went on, reality crept in. Mike was aging, the cars were rusting, and even with a TV crew, restoring them was slow and expensive. The property needed constant maintenance, insurance, taxes and labor costs piled up. Some cars were past saving, others were being damaged by snow, rain and time. Connor began pushing harder. They needed to make a change, either sell the cars or risk losing everything. It was the decision Mike had been avoiding for years, but by 2017, he finally accepted it. He listed part of his land for sale, 5 acres including the shop, for $1.45 million. The goal wasn't to walk away, but to get help, to find someone who could share the load. The reaction was mixed. Some fans were heartbroken, others were relieved, but Mike knew it was the right call. Then came the auction of 2021. It was the biggest emotional test of Mike's life. Hundreds of vehicles were lined up, cleaned up and tagged with price labels. Car lovers from across North America traveled to see it. Some wanted to buy, others just wanted to witness it. For 2 days, cars that had been in Mike's care for decades were driven, towed or lifted away. Mike watched in silence, sometimes smiling, sometimes tearing up. Every vehicle that left took a piece of him with it, but he didn't stop it, because he knew he had to let go. Letting go didn't mean he was done. It meant the cars had a chance to live again. They'd been sleeping under tarps and snow for too long. Now they had new homes, new hope, and new roads ahead. For Mike, the auction was bittersweet. Sad, yes, but freeing. After the auction, Mike's approach changed. He shifted from trying to save everything to saving what mattered most. He started focusing on quality, on the cars that really spoke to him, on the stories that needed telling. The clutter was gone. In its place was clarity. When Season 5 premiered in 2024, fans saw a different Mike, still passionate, still emotional, still cracking jokes with Avery and arguing with Connor, but also wiser, more focused, and in some ways more powerful. He was no longer buried under hundreds of unfinished dreams. He was choosing carefully, working slowly, and building something sustainable. The shop itself had evolved too. Connor, now married and more confident, had taken on more of the operations. He introduced new systems, set budgets, and made sure the business had a future. He still butted heads with his dad, but there was new respect between them. They weren't just father and son, they were partners. Avery remained the heart of the crew. Whether he was fixing a transmission or making everyone laugh, he brought balance. He reminded viewers that it's not just about what you build, it's about who you build it with. Rust Valley restorers continued to grow. Tourists kept coming. The town of Tappan became a destination, and viewers kept tuning in, not just for the cars but for the emotions, the lessons, and the bond between the characters. It became a show about second chances, not just for vehicles, but for people. Behind the scenes, Mike was also thinking about the future. He began mentoring young mechanics, teaching them not just how to fix cars, but how to respect them. He told them that every dent has a reason, every scratch has a memory. Cars aren't just machines, they're time capsules, and when you restore one, you're bringing someone's past back to life. He also became a quiet leader in the vintage restoration community. He spoke at events, visited schools, and encouraged others to follow their passion, but with purpose. He admitted his mistakes, holding on to too much, spending too much, ignoring the signs, and in doing so, he helped others avoid the same path. Mike Hall's story isn't just a TV show, it's a real-life lesson about how passion can drive us, consume us, and eventually teach us how to let go. It's about how success isn't always about how much you collect, but about how much you share. He turned rust into gold, but more importantly, he turned a chaotic dream into a lasting legacy. At 67, Mike is still going strong. He doesn't know how many more seasons there will be, or how many more cars he'll restore, but he's okay with that, because now he works with intention. Every build has a purpose. Every project is a chance to teach, to inspire, or to heal. And maybe that's the final message. It's never too late to change your path, to clean up the mess, to start again. Whether you're a mechanic, an artist,
or just someone holding on to too much, Mike's story proves that sometimes the greatest act of love is knowing when to let go. So if you've ever felt stuck, lost in your own version of a rusted field, remember this: letting go doesn't mean giving up, it means making room for what matters. Subscribe now to see what Mike Hall restores next, and discover how every bolt, every wheel, and every story can bring the past roaring back to life.